Hello again, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Star Trek Recovery. My name's Tom. I'm an addict.
Hi, Tom.
Well, more like I'm being forced to watch this. So I don't know if I'm so much an addict.
Yeah. If you're the addict, then who am I? The drug dealer? Because I'm the one forcing you?
I was going to say, I don't know. But yeah, you can hear it in my voice how excited I am to talk about Lower Decks. Episode 3.
Yeah, before we begin, I have a question. How many episodes are there? Like, how much do we have to suffer through this?
Too many, too much. I think that we get a break here, and for have you ever seen Clerks, the animated series?
No.
Okay, well, in Clerks, the animated series, there's a parody episode of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Randall winds up, with the thuggy breaking rock and pushing rocks and doing all that kind of shit. And he's like, geez, can we just get a break? And he's like, all right, fine. You take break from breaking rocks and you pull cart with teeth. That's his break. That's our break. Is our break from Lower Decks. Instead of breaking rocks, now we got to pull carts with teeth and watch season 3 of Discovery. That's what we get out of this, folks. But yeah. And then I think altogether there's 8 or 10 episodes. I really could care less. I hope there's 8, but my God.
The fewer, the better. Okay, but guys, I think that basically all of you've gotten the gist of what we feel about this. So how are you all doing in the chat? Greetings, everyone. And speaking of greetings, we have someone else joining us. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me on.
Pardon me?
Been a while, and we also have Rob, of course, with us. We haven't given him a proper intro yet.
Hello.
And of course, the other voice you heard was Andre. As if you didn't know that already, he doesn't need an introduction, but we give him one anyway because he's the boss man, of course. And I'm Tom, and yeah, I'm stuck watching Lower Decks.
Yeah, and we were just
there are worse jobs, Tom.
And there was what?
There are worse jobs.
I think you're coming through the wrong mic, Matt. You might want to check your settings there.
Matt, you have to pull. Matt, you have to pull the tin can to when the string is tight before you talk into
it. But so well, basically, none of us are huge fans of Lower Decks, but it's going to be interesting to hear what Matthew Kadish has to say, because he sometimes has contrarian views. So as soon as he gets,
I know he did about the first episode, yeah.
So it's going to be
yes, much better. There's that sexy Matt.
Yeah, I was going through my webcam mic for some reason.
I thought so. So yeah, why don't you inform the audience, and before you guys start throwing tomatoes, we love Matt, how you felt about the first episode and the second episode of Lower Decks.
All right, so I really liked the first episode. I thought that it was kind of like a good setup for the characters. I laughed pretty hard at a couple of the gags. I had some hope for some of for the Mariner Boimler relationship type thing. So I was pretty optimistic, I guess is the right word, after watching episode 1. I did not like episode 2 at all. I thought that all the humor fell flat in that episode. There were a few good Trek references in there, but overall, Mariner just went full Mary Sue. Boimler just, all the potential that he had in episode 1 seemed like a little bit undercut. So to me, it was like a 50-50 thing. I really liked episode 1. I really hated episode 2. Episode 3, I thought was very meh. It kind of fell somewhere in the middle. I liked you can tell this show is being made by people who love Star Trek because there are a lot of fantastic kind of TNG references in here. The whole premise for this episode was based off of that conversation that Geordi LaForge had with the reanimated Scotty about how Scotty would always overestimate, the time it takes for him to do stuff. So when he gets it done in the right amount of time, he seems like a hero. And Geordi was all like, I can't do that type thing. So I thought that was a cool callback for the basis of the episode. And I liked how they kind of made fun of Mariner being the Mary Sue, or basically they had the Mary Sue, Gary Stu face off with Ransom in later half of the episode. And of course, he being one of the main characters of the show because he's on the command deck, he does the whole Kirk double fist fight and he just kills it. So I liked all that stuff, but I didn't find any like real good laughs. It was more like witty situations, and I like that Boimler kind of like was the hero of the B plot, where he actually was responsible for helping resolve that, so he wasn't coming off as a complete like idiot half the time. So there were things about this episode that I liked, and there were things that I felt still weren't all that great. So for me, it was like episode 1 pretty good, episode 2 pretty bad, episode 3 somewhere right in the middle there.
Yeah, that was a very balanced perspective, so I got to hand it to you. Not quite as passionate as many of the others here are.
It makes me question some things about you being a writer too, but we'll get into that in private.
Yeah, absolutely. But okay, let's contrast the reflected and nuanced points from our good friend Matthew Kadish with Rob. Share your feelings.
Okay. You know what? This episode was marginally better. There were a couple things that I did like. I did finally like that Mariner was being put in her place by
Ransom.
Yeah, well, I was about to call him not Riker. And I did like that finally that Boimler had a couple moments that he wasn't just the butt of every joke. But at the very beginning, when they're in 10 forward or 10 backward, whatever they're calling it, you know, there's no surer way to make a character more unlikable than just heavy-handedly try to make her likable. The more they try to make Mariner look cool, the less cool she is. The whole thing with shtick about the Boimler with the doing the jig with the fiddle, and then Mariner comes in with the guitar, and Green Tilly comes in with the drums, and all of a sudden he's being blamed. I'm like, okay, you know what? First of all, as a guy who's played guitar for 30 odd years, there's no way anybody could convince me that a fiddle could be as loud as like a big stack of amplifiers. There's just no way. And so I couldn't suspend my disbelief there. But again, it comes across as so heavy-handed. You're trying to make this show. You're trying to make Mariner this likable character. You're trying.
I like this. It's try hard with a vengeance. Yeah.
And Mecca was right though. She said a second ago. How are the Klingons going to hear the music through space when there's no air? There's no sound in space. I'm like, what the? I mean, if they said, "What's that coming over your comms?"
Do I need to play the Alex Kurtzman thing again?
Yeah, maybe you do. Well, good God, at least get some basic science right in science fiction, guys. Come on. Oh.
I will say about that though, that there was one point where I chuckled, and that was like when they were like, "Nah, nothing here must be coming from your ship," and the Klingon was like, "Oh, Lieutenant Engineer, blah blah."
Yeah, he killed a guy because of it.
I mean, kind of, but then again, it just doesn't fit Trek. That was my. I mean, honestly, I fucking hated this. Like I. Getting to the point where I'm physically getting pissed off at the show.
I feel like it's not Trek though. I think that's your mistake.
And that's my problem.
You keep looking at it like it's a Star Trek show, and it's
but it's called fucking Star Trek.
They're trying.
It's an Adult Swim show with the Trek name.
They're trying really hard to say that it's to remind you that it's Star Trek at every turn, and to say it's not Star Trek. I'm like, but it's called Star Trek. They're in Starfleet. The USS Cerritos. They said the Enterprise by name. Everything. I mean, they're just throwing out as many references as they can.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, ever since Discovery premiered. Like, these haven't been Star Trek shows, you know. This is like some weird, like, offshoot with the Trek name to it. To me, like none of Picard, Discovery, Lower Decks, none of this stuff.
Then you can't call it Star. Then you can't call it Star Trek. And I keep saying an analogy would be, okay, you know what? I'm going to start my own band. And we're going to call ourselves the Beatles. and people are going to come see us. That's not the Beatles. Oh yeah, it's the Beatles. I'm like, that's not the Beatles, guys. I'm like, I know what the Beatles look like. That's not them. Oh, but it's just a name. Anybody could be the Beatles. No, guys, it's not.
It's officially sanctioned fan fiction, is what it is.
Yeah, but here's the issue, though. It's not, because that's like the thing. Because I would agree with you completely, and that is kind of like what should be the answer here. Only it's not. They've gone out officially and said that this is Star Trek. This is.
Well, I know
this comes raised from it, and of course, and then we have to, in our own head canon, say that no, obviously it isn't. Which obviously it isn't.
Well, I know that 3DS is like, yeah, this is really Star Trek, and canon wise, yeah, it's Star Trek, but I mean, it's not Star Trek. Like the last Star Trek.
Yeah, but if you have to do mental gymnastics like that, I think that's the problem here.
I mean, I agree with you. I think Kurtzman Trek has been, a disaster since the beginning, but this is what we're getting. So like, I'm just kind of taking it as it is. And the minute you divorce yourself from the fact that like, okay, like this isn't really Star Trek, you can kind of enjoy it a little bit more.
Little being the operating word.
Except for the fact
I don't think I could. Sorry, Rob, but I really don't think I could, because even if you took this out of the Trek world, I think this was a piss poor attempt at fucking satire, parody, humor, whatever you want to call it, because it is not funny. They fuck up the jokes. They fuck up every joke. Like, even when there is slightly a possibility of something funny happening, they rarely get it on point. The only thing in this episode that remotely made me chuckle was the very, 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 very end. But it became at the expense of so much stupidity. Like, I mean, like the stupidity level on this show has gone to the point where I seriously can't. And I know there's people like goofing on me for what I said earlier, but I mean, I seriously mean it. Like, when I say physically pissed, it's like I'm getting to the point where if I had hair, I would pull the shit out. Like, because I'm just getting to the point where it's just like, my God, how can you write this? Like, how do you actually put this on paper, laugh at yourself, and go, this is going to be hilarious? It's not. It isn't in the least.
The only way this passes muster is if you think the audience is an idiot. That's really the only way. I mean, if you have absolute contempt for the audience, that you think they're so far beneath you that you will say, well, you know what? Screw it. They'll, as long as it's on screen, as long as we don't give them time to think, they won't notice how bad this is.
Well, I think there are two things about this show which resonate with me as like a casual viewer. And the first is like, I think it has really good concepts to it. Like the scenarios, maybe they don't play out as funny as we would like, but some of these scenarios are just so classic, the Next Generation Trek, that like I can appreciate what they're trying to do. And in addition to that, I feel like the characters are interesting enough, and as seeing some of their relationships develop, like the part that I really found humorous in this episode was the kind of weird like sexual attraction that Ransom and Mariner had with one another, where like, he's got his shirt off and he's like fighting the alien, and she's like, why am I being so turned on by this? And then like at the end when they're in sickbay and like she's like, I'm gonna like rob you of all your blood, and he's like, why am I so turned on by this? Like, there's just a lot of that stuff like peppered in these episodes that I've seen so far, which I feel like it might not be like the best stuff, but I feel like it's leading somewhere that could be entertaining at some point, because like the foundation for it being good is there, but they just haven't quite achieved that potential yet, in my opinion.
And I get that. And all humor is subjective to a point. I totally understand that. And I'm not trying to like be a contrarian just to argue with you, but I really, just from a fundamental level of, and Rob can, back me up on this because he's a comedian, so he understands, you got to set up and a punchline. Every joke should have a setup and a punchline. When all you're doing is punchline, 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 it's not funny.
Premise, setup, punchline.
Or premise, setuup, punchline. Sorry.
I mean, there aren't a lot of big belly laugh moments in these shows.
And that's what this is supposed to be. And don't get me wrong, Matt, I respect you, but it sounds like you're just making excuses for the show. Like, that's what I keep hearing. And I hear a lot of people doing that. It's like, well, just because it's not as bad as Discovery and Picard, we should enjoy it. But it's like, you know what? Okay, so instead of being killed by acid or bullet, I'm choosing to be have my head sawed off instead. That's the choices here.
You know what? You know what?
I mean,
you know what? The moment I really did like was
there was some hyperbolic metaphor, but still,
there was one moment I did like is that when Mariner and not Riker were arguing over who was going to go fight the big guy, the big dude. Where I can't remember his name.
If I didn't dislike her character, I would have liked that scene.
But they were going back and forth fighting over the sword, and she said something about, oh yeah, you don't know what it takes to blah blah, and he goes, you're right, and stabs her in the foot. I was like, finally, someone puts her in her place.
That was probably one of the closest things to a chuckle.
That was the highlight of the episode, where he basically stabs her in the foot to prevent her from being the Mary Sue that she has been the past couple episodes.
and they actually let him go kick ass. Yeah.
And then he goes and becomes the Gary Stew of the episode, which I love that dynamic there, because so far we've seen Ransom kind of shitting on Boimler. But like, we haven't seen like the whole like stew off between Mariner and Ransom until this episode. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic there. Like I said, I feel like there are kernels in these characters that are like really good. And like when they start hitting on the right notes, you can see the potential there for something really fun.
I respect that.
Yeah. But they've kind of gone over the top with Mariner these last couple episodes.
There's a problem though, fundamentally with that though, is for me to be able to respect and find that humorous. That means that they're self-aware enough to know that the rest of this shit is garbage. Like, that's my problem here, Matt, is if they're that clever enough to do. It is though, really. What when things like Orville and you've got a guy who worked on shows like Rick and Morty, there should be a much higher fucking bar for the humor here. This is like some generic fucking dime store bullshit. Just because they can pull out fucking, reference after reference after reference. I mean, the fucking Shatner reference made me cringe.
Yeah,
like, I mean, come on. Like, and that whole first episode had a whole ending of that shit. Like, in every episode, we get 12 different references. That was a little bit different, though. See, that wasn't her specifically making that comment, and that's why it almost got a chuckle out of me, because of the way it was set up at the end there, and it was like in the future, and it was, this perfect race, and they're living off of the Boimer, whatever rule or whatever. Like, that was a premise setup joke. So, like, we got this whole episode for one joke that kind of was actually done correct. It's basically what we've got.
But see, that's the thing. I mean, there's nuggets here and there. There's kernels here and there of stuff that could be funny, but they don't execute it well. That's the biggest problem. And they just fall back on the references. I once said to someone who I used to work with why I didn't like Glee. And I said it's the same problem. It's one of the biggest problems that I have with this show is that it's for people who get the references but not the substance. So that the reference is important. So you point and say, "Oh, I recognize that. Oh, they said Kirk. I know what that means. Oh, look. Oh, look. There's a Klingon. I know what those are." But you don't understand. You really don't understand why they're doing anything. And it's this weird kind of thing. It's almost this sort of shorthand, like Cliff Notes, geekdom, Cliff Notes version of Star Trek, where they're just giving you just enough so that it looks like Star Trek, but they're not getting anything else. And
I'll give them the credit that they're at least going, like, all the stuff looks like classic Trek, the Klingons, the other, but still, it's at what expense? And it's mainly probably just because they can. And now with the whole remerger and everything. But Andre, you've been quiet. I want to know what you think of this episode. And, somebody brought up the funny, and it's funny they brought this up. It's not even worth pirating. I have something to say about that here in a little bit too. And we also got some number talk, because I think the official numbers came out and we weren't too far off on our report. So I'm sure you have a few things to say about that as well. But
yeah, absolutely.
Give us your feelings on the episode first, of course.
Yeah, and Tom, I didn't know you have something else to do in the meantime. So well, my thoughts on the episode as a whole is, well, just to summarize, I absolutely hated the first episode and the entire concept of that this second contact crew is somehow less important. Are you kidding me? They're more important. I mean, first contact, that's for whichever asshole happens to be there at the time and discover a new civilization. The second contact, that's the good people. That's real people that has to go in and smooth over all the problems that the first contact people who were completely unprepared stupidly did. So I'm offended by the whole concept. That being said, I thought that the second episode actually was a little bit of a step up, because I thought that the Klingon thing was a little bit funny with how like he puked over himself and everything. So there I am in complete disagreement with Matt, which is fine because we have wide acceptance for any view, and here there are no right and no wrong views. So any you out there who may enjoy the show, good for you. Don't let anyone take that away from you if you find some kind of enjoyment in this. And I don't, very little. I found like a chuckle here and there, but that's pretty much it. And for this episode then, there were some good moments. Again, with the Klingons. I like what they're doing with the Klingons. But like the story of the episode itself was absolutely atrocious. Like, oh, everyone has to be super efficient all the time. Absolutely no downtime. People in management books today, they even say you cannot expect people to work at 100% efficiency all the time. They're going to burn out really fast. So no manager worth their salt is going to expect any more than 80% at any given time, because they know that's how good it's going to be. And if you really need to punch it at crunch time, then those are exceptions and not the rule. Other than that, yeah, I kind of like this thing that the lead character that she was kind of like robbed of the opportunity to beat up the big guy towards the end there. Someone else got to share the spotlight a little bit. And we got to see that, not Riker, because I don't remember his real name, that he actually, that guy, whatever, that he too got some moments, and he actually can do the job. He's there for a reason. Not everyone is a complete joke. And I have to read a super chat here, which I think is very relevant, from Lars Hansen, a fellow Nordic brethren of mine, who sent us 50 Danish krona, saying, for once I'm not jealous of you people living in the US. You can keep ST lower decks to yourselves.
Well, you can see it if you have a VPN, or if you live in the US, you could use a VPN to avoid it. There's that. And there is a VPN we suggest you use, right, Andre? And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, there absolutely is a VPN we suggest you use, and that's VPN from Surfshark. And we really do use it ourselves. So just type in the code MIDNIGHT for a very special deal that's about to expire. So if you want those 2 extra months for free or whatever it was, you have to act now.
I think it was 3, but yeah, 2 or 3, yeah.
Something like that. Oh, and Pop Culture Minefield is in the chat. Hey, guys.
Yes, indeed. I know people have been bringing up the Batman news. We'll be actually dropping something about that in between this and the live show over on Mead Live. So, and we'll definitely have more to talk about that on Mead Live. So stay tuned for that. We'll get to those other super chats real soon here. So don't worry about that.
Absolutely. Matt, you've heard what I had to say. Any thoughts or defense?
I mean, like if you look at this as like something on par with the live action stuff, because live action stuff is very serious. I can see why you'd be critical of it. My whole thing is, I look at this as like a hyper reality type thing. Like it's more of a cartoon to me. I mean, I feel like a lot of your criticisms would be something akin to, oh, Yogi Bear isn't, portraying what a real bear would do when he's going after the picnic baskets. Like there's a disconnect here where I feel like the people who are a little bit friendlier to the show are looking at it as more of a different.
If Yogi Bear had been like a spin-off of, I don't know, the Crocodile Hunter or something, then that would have been fair criticism.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of cartoon adaptations of live action stuff, go to a different place with the material. Like it's not realistic, you know. And I think that for me, I'm looking at the show less like an extension of the Next Generation and more like, oh, this is the Saturday morning version of the Next Generation type thing. Like this is something I'd watch with my 6-year-old on Adult Swim or Cartoon Network or Disney Channel or something like that. Like it's not real Trek to me. It's something that is its own thing. And so I think that, you know, being a fan of like the cartoon, like kind of more adult cartoon.
You'd let a 6-year-old watch this?
No, I wouldn't. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm looking at it not as like a new Star Trek series. I'm looking at it as like a Rick and Morty-ish take on Star Trek. And so I'm a little bit more lenient on it in terms of like how it handles the subject matter.
I would agree, but they're still calling it Star Trek. That's the big thing. That is the problem. You can't divorce it from the larger.
But I mean,
Trek,
like, would you have the same criticism of the Super Friends cartoon? You know, like the stuff that we grew up watching on Saturday mornings. Like,
yeah, but the difference is here.
Batman
to be part of the.
I mean, it's a completely different thing.
Well, no, but the Super Friends cartoon was a more simplified version.
The difference is the Super Friends cartoon isn't referring to the 78 Christopher Reeve movie in the cartoon and pretending that's the same Superman or, you know, stuff like that. Like the difference is here, you have people actually referring to Kirk and other characters that exist in Star Trek. And treating them like they're that's the thing, Matt. Is I get where you're coming from.
The Super Friends referred to.
I don't feel like that's a fair.
I mean,
I don't feel like that's a fair comparison. Comic books and the way they work are a little bit different than Star Trek.
But
Star Trek was a TV show first and foremost, and has always kind of been, except for the film.
Guys, we need someone to break the tie here. So let's bring in our other writer, the script doctor.
Hello, how's everybody doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah. So, well, I mean, Matt, your argument for cartoons with regards to comic books is a fair approach on the surface, but I kind of have to side a little bit with Tom because Super Friends doesn't really draw a direct sequel to Wonder Woman from Linda Carter or Batman from
like
66
or droids. Those cartoons. I mean, those are Star Wars cartoons.
But those were still treated as canon by George Lucas,
and
that too.
Until the prequels.
That's CBS. So I mean, the point I'm trying to make is like you can't judge animation the same way you would judge live act. Like if they wanted to make a serious animation.
They did that before. They did that in 1973.
Like if they wanted to make this a serious animated entry into canon, I'd be holding it to a different standard. But this is obviously geared towards like the Adult Swim crowd. So like I look at it as something separate from, you know, what we get in the live action version of it. It's like it's something that is its own thing. It's not part of the cohesive whole.
I get that, but I still look at
then it's not part of the cohesive whole while referring to Next Generation characters and Kirk and the 2260s.
When you name drop Gary Mitchell in the first episode, there's an expectation that this is going to be as part of the whole cohesive whole. I mean,
I don't understand why you guys are so hung up on these other references. This is Star Trek. It's going to reference other Star Trek, but at least they're not like, you know, doing what, you know, Discovery did, where they're actually bringing in characters recast, you know, like Spock. And
they're doing worse
those
shit.
Characters.
They're doing worse shit because this is supposed to be Star Trek, but everybody in this show is so fucking stupid that they would never get into Starfleet. That's the problem you have here fundamentally. You have shows that do it infinitely better, and when you have the show that is the Starship Enterprise show or the flagship show.
They're cartoon characters.
They are though. They're fucking dumb.
Well, I mean, you have
they're dumb for you. They're dumb.
You have instances in each episode where they show how capable they are. You know, so like they're not completely dumb, but they act like cartoon characters, and I think that's what's bugging you is like sometimes cartoon characters act dumb in order to get the scenario going. But I mean, like Boimler, like even though like he's been made the fool of. He's obviously very proficient in a lot of different things, which is one of the reasons why I was giving him the benefit of the doubt in the first episode.
No, I mean, they're stupid. They're so stupid that even if you take away the comedy cartoon aspect of it, they would not be in Starfleet. None of these people outside of maybe Boimler and the other guy captain.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're the only other ones that may actually make it. And there's no other way that any of these other people would be allowed to be in Starfleet. Especially what's her face, Maki Spike 2.0, Maki Spock 2.0's mother.
I think the joke is that you only really have Starfleet to get into if you don't want like to be a farmer on Earth or something like that. So everyone just goes into Starfleet, and there's got to be a place to put in the underachievers. You know,
they wouldn't be put on a ship.
Yeah,
they would be on administrative.
There's only 2 economies of farming in Starfleet.
Well, I mean, like, I'm sure there's lots of different stuff people can do in the 23rd century, but
probably on the 24th century.
24th century, but you know, the point I'm trying to make is like I think you guys are taking the show way too seriously.
Well, no, and to be fair,
I'm just disappointed with the execution. It's just
no, because I even gave the second episode credit because it was trying to do for a little bit there what Script and I said the show should have been from the very start, and that was these guys are the lower deck of the second contact crew. All the cool shit that happens away from them. So all they ever get to do is talk about it. The stuff we saw in that second episode with Cyborg Kid, that's what this show should be. But they even lost that in the mix of the episode. Like it's gotten to a point where all the stuff that the show should be, it's not. And I mean, they're trying to make it Star Trek even more so. So that goes against your argument, Matt. Like it's like everything that the show, like they're trying to avoid being Orville, and they're trying to avoid being, you know, Star Trek at the same time. It just doesn't work. I don't understand.
They've also expanded their lower decks crew aspect to the rest of the ship. So
somebody said it, and I wish I could credit them, but they called it Mad Magazine Star Trek.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're not trying to be Star Trek. In fact, I think that they're doing a really good job at trying to be Star Trek with a lot of the scenarios that we've seen so far, a lot of the references. But the thing that has really kind of interested me in this, like you know, humor is subjective. So obviously I have a different sense of humor from you guys. But the thing that I've been really impressed with that I haven't gotten from either Picard or from Discovery is that I actually really like the core characters.
And if you're gonna call, no, I gotta stop this here. I ain't a fucking racist. If they actually made a decent fucking character for once, then maybe I wouldn't say that. And I actually just said I like the Cyborg character, so you can just go fuck off because I'm not a racist. I'm sick of being called a fucking racist every day. Say sorry about that, but thank you.
Yeah, this character would be unlikable no matter what her race or gender would be.
But I do like her and Boimler, how they play off one another. Like it's the big like kind of lethal weapon opposites attract mentality where you've got like the maniac and the straight man and the odd couple mentality for Script Doctor there. That's what I was looking for. They're the quintessential odd couple, which I think is a good foundation around which to build on. And I like how they play off each other, but I just don't like how one-sided it is because they always make it a point. Mariner is always right. Boimler is always the mess up, the screw up. So, I like that in this episode, we got to see Boimler be a little bit more competent and Mariner get put in her place a little bit. Because like that to me, like when you have these flawed characters who, continue to be flawed, that makes them interesting to me. And I really like Rutherford, the new cyborg guy. I find him very entertaining. The Orion girl, I'm not quite sold on quite yet, but I like that they have a little relationship going between her and Rutherford. I like that we're getting more of the command staff. That Bjorn security officer just cracks me up every time he's on screen. I don't know why. I just really enjoy him.
Yeah, he's funny. I like him. He's like my favorite on the show.
Yeah, and I'm growing on Ransom. I really like Lieutenant Commander Ransom.
They redefined his character for this episode, actually. He's unrecognizable from the first 2 episodes.
Well, it's kind of funny because in the first 2 episodes, I mentioned this before you got on, we kind of see him giving Boimler a hard time, and he comes off as very insecure around his own captain. But when he's on his own, like he's the Gary stew, and there was like a stew off that I said between him and Mariner in this episode. He ended up winning, but I really like that dynamic because it's like, yeah, that's like if we were watching a regular Trek show and he was one of the main characters, that's what we would see in the Trek show, and we're seeing him do that through Mariner's eyes. and she's like strangely turned on by it and stuff like that. So like, even though like I didn't laugh at any point, during like the whole like they're captive and they're fighting in this arena scene, I did appreciate the kind of humor of the situation, and I could see how like I could see what the people who wrote the show were going for, and I liked it. I felt like it was quintessential Star Trek
This
stuff.
was a better structured episode than what we've seen before. I mean, there's a direct correlation to the captain's actions for efficiency and then all the crap that happens as a result of burning out the crew. I thought that was a pretty good story element. Like, I wasn't impressed with this episode in comparison to all the others, but it was a little bit better. I liked how Ransom was redefined to make me understand why he could be a first officer in an XO aboard a starship, given his treatment of how he was with regards to his the away mission that he was in charge of, the fact that he's willing to die for the rest of his crew so that they wouldn't have to. Like, those are admirable traits, and the fact that he's a little cocksure about it and a little
but that's part of the
superficial
cartoon.
makes him a little bit more funnier with regards to that dynamic for the tone of this show. It's strange that he's given the character traits that I would prefer to see in Mariner, as opposed to what we actually get. Where, like she's just this. She's got like a chip on her shoulder. I call her the combination between Wesley Crusher and Michael Burnham, because that's exactly what she is. She's just the love child of those two characters, as it were. And I like the fact that Ransom was this type of guy where his experience and his ability to play off and know his crew allowed him to sort of stab her in the foot so he could essentially either sacrifice himself or win the combat event to follow. I thought I was like, yeah, this is actually something I can buy if you're taking a comedic approach to Star Trek. It was a little on the nose for my liking, but I mean, they're at least heading an inch closer towards a direction I think would be more in tune with balancing Star Trek and comedy.
You're just an inferior attempt at a more ethnically diverse version of me, Mariner. Nobody's buying this crap.
Well, and there's more than just this show. It doesn't have international release for more than one reason. I don't know if you want to get into that part yet, Andre, as far as like the ratings of the show and how it's being received and the lack of international distribution and the fact that it's already free on YouTube and
Oh my God!
Only in the US. Only in the US. It's geo-blocked
right.
everywhere else, to be sure. But I have to say that I like the way that they have bulked up or inflated the views by basically making that video an advertisement, so that many people get to see it, or it sort of counts as a view just to get the advertisement.
They've also made it the channel trailer so that you have no choice but to see it as soon as you go.
I haven't looked. Is there comments allowed or
all access page? I don't know. I'll go head over there.
If there is, maybe we'll go through them on a mead, if not this weekend. But yeah.
CBS all asses. Let me see. Hold on.
But yeah, we did a video where we got some numbers leaked to us, and our numbers were pretty close to the actual numbers, from what I recall.
Yeah, they changed the channel trailer to The Trouble with Edward, the short bus trek.
Oh, all the short bus are free now. I know that.
Yeah, also geo-blocked, but basically, as you were saying, we released a video, and the numbers that we got, they were pretty close to the final official numbers, wouldn't you say?
Wait. You mean you guys accurately report on stuff?
Oh, we do more than you think.
One of the few on YouTube.
It's unbelievable. Don't tell on everybody. We got a rep though to keep. There was that Batman news and shit that dropped earlier too, but we're looking real bad today.
I mean, come on, quick, Tom, make something up.
Clickbait it.
Problem is, in 2020, if I make something up, it'll probably come true.
Yeah, guys, just remember, if you remember the first Mad Max movie, it wasn't too bad then. It was like in Mad Max 2 that things got really bad. Well, Mad Max 1 took place in the year 2021, so we're not out of the woods yet.
Well, I'm ready to just walk away.
Just walk away. All you got to do to tank this show is make a video about how it's Trump's favorite show. He watches it every Thursday. It'll be gone.
Love Lower Decks. Love it. Love it. Mikey Spock 2.0.
It's the best Star Trek I've ever seen.
Star Trek I've ever
Granted, I've
seen.
never watched any Star Trek before, but
If
I'm
you
sure
want
this
to
is the
give
best.
Alex Kurtzman a heart attack, I agree, Matthew. That's absolutely the way
Speaking
to
of
go about it.
Kurtzman, okay, now again, we have to preface this with rumor. Did you hear about the whole meeting that supposedly went down? I believe it was today or yesterday, Andre.
Yes, I did, and we have a separate video in the works about it, but we're jumping ahead of ourselves.
Yes, sorry.
Script Doctor, let's get back to the numbers that we actually reported on fairly accurately, but there was like a slight deviance between the number that we got leaked early and the final numbers, well within margin of error, I would say, but a slight deviance. Script Doctor, any thoughts on what that?
Yeah, I think it was like what, just over
About 100,000, I think.
Not even that much. I don't think it was.
Not a
just
full, yeah.
Not even a full
I'm just
100,000.
Well, let's see. According to Numeris, the Star Trek Lower Decks dropped to 25th in the rankings for Canadian audiences, below reruns of The Big Bang Theory, and
ouch!
Young Sheldon as well was also apparently a rerun, with 527,000 confirmed viewers, according to that latest report.
And I believe ours was like in the 470 some thousand range, wasn't it, Andre? If I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. I got the script here somewhere.
Yeah. I don't recall numbers, but yeah, it was.
I think it was 404 or.
Yeah.
Was it that low? I thought we were closer, but
yeah,
I could be wrong.
What could the discrepancy be of? Is there a reason, like, could more things be included?
They could have added in, you know what I was thinking? It's funny you asked that. I think they added in, isn't there a way you can watch it on a streaming service that's connected through that up there at all?
There's Crave,
like
yes. You can watch it through Crave as well.
I was thinking that might be the Crave
source of the
numbers.
numbers. Yeah, depending on the source of the numbers, like where this particular person got them from, if he got them through the actual airing network itself and not including Crave, then that could account for the discrepancy. It just depends on the actual core source. I mean, I when I saw the report, it looked like something that came out of a network's the network office. So
that was my guess too. Again, my guess. So I can't, nobody takes me the wrong way there.
Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be very interesting to see what the numbers for the third episode are. And I have a hunch, certainly a hope, that we'll be getting them before long as well. Certainly.
Well, we also predicted the second episode numbers, which have yet to come out. So
yeah, and the percentage
of a drop,
is more interesting to me than the hard numbers.
I will say this, though. When it comes to streaming services, you can't look at viewership the same way you would like a broadcast show.
Yeah.
Because with the broadcast shows, it matters. Viewership does matter. It's about eyeballs. With streaming services, it's about subscription revenue. So even though like a show might not be getting a lot of eyeballs, if people are retaining the subscriber base, like if CBS is seeing like a lower amount of drop off because more Trek people are coming in to watch the show, then it's considered a success. So like lower viewership numbers can be slightly deceiving for a streaming only show compared to a broadcast show. So you just need to keep that.
Well, these are the broadcast numbers though, Matt. The extra 100,000 is what we're saying, maybe the streaming numbers added to it because it's through the network. But no, you're right. And a great example of this is why I believe the Orville got moved to Hulu. Because as Rob can attest, whenever we talked about the ratings for Orville, it would do just as well or better in its after views on streaming. So I think that's where they figured their best route was going that way. And I think another part of it is mainly Disney not wanting to create any more stuff for the competition than they want to, because a lot of people don't realize that Fox Television Studios and Fox Networks are two different things, and the Murdochs still own the networks, and Disney now owns Fox Television Studios, which does make a lot of programming for Fox Networks. But yeah, so it's all kind of fucking confusing. Sorry, folks.
And the Orville would do better on what they call the +7 ratings.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it would almost double its whatever the live viewers. I mean,
so the point is we actually have a network rating for this show, and we actually could compare it to what they did with Discovery and Picard as well. And this is actually doing worse than Discovery, if I remember right.
Well, it's also animation, and animation doesn't have as big of an
This is the
audience.
one time I will let you get away with that fucking excuse today, Matt.
And Matt, I will also say that I agree with you in that this isn't all bad. On the contrary, this is the best Star Trek we've had on TV since Enterprise.
Which isn't saying much, unfortunately.
No, it's not.
Which isn't saying much. But it's the best, or rather the least bad, and that's something. But still, about the animation, when the animated series from 1973 is 100 times as good, and in my opinion, it really is, then there's something wrong with this, not with the animated series, with the original.
But I mean that's a subjective call too, because I could look at that original Star Trek cartoon show and be like, I don't like it, you know. So I mean, animation, it's not something that's for everyone, so it's a different audience. And I think that this was really kind of like they were taking the Adult Swim approach to this material. So it's kind of hard to judge it based off of like how it compares to other Trek, because they're going for a completely different audience, in my opinion.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. Who's the audience? Who's the audience for this? Like, it has very few viewers. It has no international distribution. So whoever they made this show for, whoever they thought the audience was, I don't think they hit it. I think that they probably had an imagined audience in mind. But if that audience doesn't exist, or if it exists in smaller numbers, or that actual audience just didn't care for this, whatever it is, I don't think that they hit the mark.
Well, you know, that's a really good question, Andre, because I think most of Hollywood nowadays, they don't really know who they're making stuff for. But I think that this show in particular was kind of meant to appeal to kind of like the younger audience that the live action Trek that Kurtzman has done hasn't quite hit yet. Like I know that they've specifically been trying to appeal to, you know, the teenage audience and get new blood into Trek, because like Picard and Discovery have been very much geared towards adults, with like a lot of the cursing and the nudity and the violence and stuff like that. So they wanted something that was a little bit more kind of hip and cool to appeal to that Adult Swim crowd, which is mostly teenagers who watch it when they're up late at home on the weekends and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know if they're really hitting that audience, but I know that like that's what they were trying to go for with this show in particular. I think they even talked about that at Star Trek convention, if I'm not mistaken, Tom.
About which part?
About the audience, about like who they're trying to appeal to with this show.
I don't know. All they did was dance around everything we asked them, and nobody was in the audience to talk to. So, I mean, I'm not sure who they were talking to besides us.
I agree with you completely that that's what they tried for. But my hypothesis is that they tried and they failed.
That's fair. I mean, we won't know if they failed until after this season runs, and we're going to get a full kind of view of, you know, whether or not they're going to renew it, how well it did, stuff like that.
Well,
but
somebody asked.
Honestly, I think they're looking at this as just like filler up until Discovery season 3 comes out. I think that,
which is also a terrible way to approach a television show.
Yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to bring up, like, somebody brought. I think it was in a super chat. I think it was a regular chat where they asked like how much one of these shows really cost. Nowadays, an animated show is really not that expensive. I mean, they're not cheap, don't get me wrong, but in comparison to what they used to cost and what it costs to put together a live action show, they're very cheap, especially in the day and age of streaming and in the world we live in right now with shit going on.
Yeah,
you're going to see a lot more animated shows coming out, actually.
What's funny is that this show, it uses Adobe Character Animator to do everything. And that show, once you have all the assets in place, it's a lot like After Effects, where like once you have the character models and you have like the backgrounds and stuff like that, you can put together an episode really quickly. So I think a lot of the buildup for the show was just them getting all the assets together and learning how to use the software to do it.
Absolutely.
Like that. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, they reused some stuff in this episode.
Yeah, I've been learning how to do Adobe Character Animator for a couple months now, and I can see like when I'm watching the show, I'm like, oh, they did this there and stuff like that. So it's kind of,
and again, so like it doesn't even matter how much of a success this is. I'm sure if there's enough people watching for enough interest in their eyes, comparatively, they'll keep the show going. This will get renewed, or it already is renewed, as they are saying. So, I mean, it doesn't. I don't think it really matters how bad it is. That's the problem with most of this shit, and that's the thing we've kind of been saying from the start is they don't really have that much incentive to make it great, outside of if they really started losing money. Well, and that's the rumor we're starting to hear, though. So
yeah, well, you also have to remember the mentality of CBS / Viacom with Star Trek is that they don't really care about the success of the shows necessarily. They care about how much they can make off the licensing for the show.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, for instance, like with Lower Decks, they can sell the cartoon stuff to kids, like the Lower Decks mailboxes, the Lower Decks.
Well, I don't even mean that so much as just selling it to like Amazon and Netflix and other channels and networks. But yeah,
but even like the merchandising licensing for Lower Decks and stuff like that. Like you can buy a 2-year-old a Lower Decks like sweatshirt or something like that. They can make dolls out of this to be on kids' beds, and they'll sell to the Trek crowd. So in CBS and Viacom's eyes, the real key to making Star Trek successful is to get out a new IP so that they can sell a new license for it, and that's where they make the bulk of their money off Star Trek. It's not necessarily from the
well, that's probably the perfect segue to the one thing I think we're going to discuss, Andre, and that is that there is no fucking market anymore for these toys. There's like literally no merchandise out there. It is like a dead zone. They have what few little merchandise they did have is starting to pop up on discount shelves in Walgreens and stuff. And this is no joke. Like McFarlane ain't making anything else. Eagle Moss is hardly doing anything. I've not heard of anything Lower Decks.
McFarlane pulled out of the contract. Yeah. How bad is that? Before they even got the next book.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like I've not heard one thing coming out for Lower Decks merchandise at all.
Well, you know what's funny about that, Tom, is that typically the big licensing expo is in June here in Vegas, and that's where they like a lot of these big TV shows and stuff do a lot of their licensing deals, and it got canceled this year. So they just might not have sold the licenses yet, which is why you're seeing a dearth.
They had 2 fucking years to sell the licenses. They had 2 fucking years to sell this show.
They typically don't do that until the show premieres, though.
No, that's not totally true. They usually want to have shit ready for the show. And this has been a common thing we've seen with Star Trek from the start, man. You know that. And I understand you want to be like as, level-headed about these things as you want, but I think we got to the point where the proof is way far into the pudding when there's Picard and Kirk dolls sitting on discount shelves at Walgreens. That means they have killed the fucking franchise. Like, it is so dead they can't even sell the old stuff now. Like, nobody's interested in it. Nobody has, just like their excuse of, the pandemic, this and bullshit. You had 2 fucking years to sell this show, and they still haven't sold it.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but
no, I know, but I'm just
the
trying
whole
to
COVID thing
perspective
does impact, like people don't just go to stores and shop around anymore. They
no, I know, but okay, let's forget about that aspect of it, though. They're sitting there saying that they can't sell the show because of COVID. No, that should be the reason why they should be able to sell the show, no matter how bad it is. They should have had people lined up
selling the show. We're talking about selling licenses.
It's the same thing, though, Matt. The show is a license, though. It is, and that's part of the reason you're not listening to what I said before, though. Like when you went off on the venture about the toys and shit, the toys are dead, Matt. That's my point. The only thing they're making money on, and the only reason Kurtzman has been allowed to go as far as he has, is because they make money off the licenses from Netflix and Amazon, but they're not anymore. And that's why Watts is pissed. And that's why she's in there doing her fucking job, because they ain't making the money they're supposed to.
Well, I would argue that a lot of these ancillary licenses for merchandise and stuff like that, they're still very lucrative for CBS, but they don't have any. That's what I'm saying, Matt. There is none. There is zero. It's not even like we're talking about, we're being hyperbolic and there's a little bit of this and a little. No, there is fucking zero, Matt. They aren't even doing old Trek stuff. That's what we're talking about here. There is nothing, not a zip zilch, and there hasn't been on the horizon now for about a year. No, there's still
nothing.
There are still licensees out there that are paying for the
What?
licenses for Star Trek.
What are they making though? There's nothing coming, man. That's what I'm saying. Like
There's Picard wine, there's T-shirts, there's toys.
Who's making that? CBS is making that. That's the difference. That's the same shit that we can make right now. Like we're doing T-shirts. We can do cups, and that's what they do in house. They're doing that themselves. That's not a fucking license.
They are not
That's them doing it themselves.
No,
I guarantee you they're doing it themselves.
I guarantee you it isn't.
Who?
They sell that to people who get the official licenses to do, like T-shirt companies.
Yeah,
T-shirt companies.
Guys.
There's been no official T-shirt company doing anything for them though. It's all on their website.
You can go on the CBS website and find the list of.
That's my point. It's all on the CBS website. Nobody else is licensing this shit. Nobody else.
People are licensing it. Dude.
There are some licensees that there are. The problem is that the big licensees, the ones that make the products that are real money in, they're all out of it, and they have been for some time. Yeah, you can find some T-shirts, you can find some minor models, you can find some wine, and they've gone by third parties and stuff like that. But you're not going to find the real merchandise, like the people like McFarlane. They pulled out. I've forgotten the name of the big toy manufacturers, the ones that pay the big bucks. They're out. They've made it clear that we want no part of this. And Tom, I sent you a picture that our good friends at Pop Culture Minefield sent us. And it's glorious, and you need to show it to everyone. And it harkens back to...
somebody else is going to have to share it because we're on...
Okay, Rob, can you share it? I'll send it to you as well then. It's a glorious picture that was cooked up for us right now as we were talking. It's brilliant. Yeah. Someone needs to make that go viral. I'm sending it to you now, Rob.
All right. Where do you send it on Facebook or?
I'll send it to you on the Facebook. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh man. Okay. Yeah.
I'll share it on Twitter at least, so people can go to Twitter. But...
we should make a T-shirt of that.
Share screen. Brother. Sheriff Vivaldi tab.
I think we can technically, because since he's president, he's a political. He can't stop us.
Matt, this one is full credit to you.
So yeah.
Just
bringing it up.
It? Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm trying to.
Can you zoom in at all, Rob?
I don't see anything.
Hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Yep, that's going to get this show canceled.
I heard on Midnight's Edge. Best way to take it. Say Trump loves it. Spread the word. Love Star Trek. Always has. Kirk, great idea. Kirk, great. Want him for the Space Force, okay?
Oh, guys, we need to make that go viral. So I'm going to tweet that out right now. It's glorious. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks, thanks Gary and Keith. Anyway. That's glorious. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. But yeah. Anyway, it's obvious that that Star Trek brings out the passion in everyone, doesn't it? The only one it doesn't bring out the passion in are those paying the big bucks for licensing. Tiny minor licensees that don't really matter that much. Yeah, they may pay a little bit here and there. But I do believe that we have some super chats. So let's go through those while we think of some other way to rag on this before we call it the night. The first one today is from Lee Jordan, who sent us $4.99 saying, "Thank you, MidnightsEdge, for taking the torture of watching this crap for all of us." Yeah, as you can see, it does take a toll on everyone, one way or the other. And the next one is good. This one I want all of you to contribute to. Sir Brastion sent us £5 saying, "I took Andre's wise advice and got Gaiman's Sandman. Do you guys have a comic/graphic novel recommended list? There's too much trash to wade through." Absolutely. I'm going to give you one or two recommendations myself, and then maybe the rest of you guys also have some recommendations for best graphic novels. There's two in particular that I would say that you should check out. One is Hellblazer graphic novel, Dangerous Habits. That's John Constantine, or Constantine, as some call it. Hellblazer, Dangerous Habits by Garth Ennis. Check it out. You will not regret it. Another one, which incidentally is also by Garth Ennis. He's a fantastic writer, and that is The Punisher. The Punisher Max the Slavers. One of the best comic books ever put out in comic book form, and that's available as a separate trade paperback. So I would say absolutely check out those. You will not regret it. Those are my two recommendations. So guys, who wants to go next and recommend some paperbacks?
Well, you can check out Earthman Jack on Amazon.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just go to kadishbooks.com. It's right there.
Yeah. That's I stand by that.
Shameless plug, by the way.
But it's really cool. So absolutely check that out too. Script Doctor.
Well, I like some of the earlier tradeback series of 2000 AD. So that's not just the Judge Dredd stuff, but also the other collection of short stories. I'd recommend checking those out. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, I haven't gotten into comic books in a long time. I left that area in 2006 when they started getting kind of lame. But I would.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go right ahead.
There's a manga series that I really love. It's super long though, so like, unless you want to really invest in a series, like don't get into it. It's called Berserk. There was an anime based on it, but the manga's been going for years. I think Dark Horse is still releasing, English versions of it. I've got something like 35 of the books, and it's still going. But it's really like in-depth dark fantasy stuff. So like, it's kind of like Game of Thrones meets like H.P. Lovecraft type thing. It's really cool. So I would recommend checking out Berserk.
Rob, I know you must have some recommendations.
Yeah, I was reading Playboy Girls of Summer from about 2000, 2006. Wait a minute, you were talking like real books, right? Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones where you can't hide behind articles.
Rob's just canceled himself.
And I just got canceled. Yeah, and the YouTube police got me. No, I like I said, I always like Clive Cussler's stuff. So he's a lot of fun to read. I was reading a collection of Woody Allen's short stories called The Insanity Defense. Those are always interesting.
Is that the defense he used when he was accused of pedophilia?
Oh yeah, the very same.
I tell you, man, all this stuff coming out of Hollywood right now with the whole Netflix cuties thing, and it used to be kind of a fringe thing about like there's this pedophile ring in Hollywood and stuff like that. But with Corey Feldman coming out and
the Corey Feldman thing was a bit much to do about nothing, but yeah,
I love
all the shit he put in that was stuff everybody already knew.
I love Sun Yi, so I love Sun Yi and I was very happy together. So. Yeah. Woody's persona non grata.
Too soon ye. My recommendations for graphic novels would be besides the obvious like Watchmen and stuff like that. One that always seems to get overlooked is Kingdom Come. I love that one, and of course Flashpoint's a great one. Dark Knight Returns is another great one. Killing Joke. If you can find like the collections of the original Ninja Turtles, I always recommend those. I know they're not really necessarily graphic novels per se, but they almost kind of are because they did go in like sectional runs. So it's like, I don't know. Those are probably my biggest recommendations right there.
Yeah. And then we have BK09 who sent us 5 Lev, saying, as much as I love watching Matt do the battered fanboy routine, I really don't think that one can appreciate this show without a ton of akavit.
Got a ton of what?
Akavits. It's a.
Akavit. Yeah, it's Norwegian specialty, Norwegian vodka.
I have a bottle actually, Andre.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, when I came back from Norway, actually, I bought a bottle. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll bring some more when I come stateside, when civilization returns somewhat to normal. So drinks are on me. So that'll be something to look forward to. And something else to look forward to is the next super chat, which would be Defenders of the Faith, who sent us $5 saying, Kobayashi Maru, give a show to Putzman and have him make it likable. Yeah, that's a pretty non-winnable scenario, isn't it? And Sondar sent us $2 Canadian saying, what would you assume the budget of Lower Decks is? Matt and Script Doctor, you are best.
Oh, so it was a super chat. Yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about that already, but yeah.
Yeah, we talked about what goes into it. There's not that much to
That
read.
was the one I was referring to, though. That was
if you had to put like an amount on it, what do you think that it would cost approximately, a series like this? Like, just best guess.
Well, I do have a friend that does animation. She worked on the Magic School Bus, the recent one, and her rates were 29 cents per frame for a character, and I think $1 and change for a background. And she did work on a CG Assets machine, I think maybe Adobe at the time. And depending on how many frames they use, most cartoons don't actually use a 24 or 29 frame rate. They usually use like maybe 12, and then have some other looping going on in there for mouth movement and eyes. But I would say the budget would be pretty minuscule compared to a live action one. Maybe $150,000 an episode ish, just on that cost, not including actors or directors, just the actual like animation side of things, probably.
Yeah, this thing, judging a cartoon based on frames is very old school. Like nowadays with computers and stuff like that, it's not like a frame by frame type thing, because like I said, once you have the assets for the show created and put into the computer, it's just, you have like a couple guys assembling stuff and rendering things, and the big payout is for the voice actors. So I would say that this show is probably closer to like 350 to 400,000 an episode. That sounds about right to me, whereas the live action stuff can get as high as like $9 million an episode or $15 million an episode, something like that. But with cartoons, it's, like you just have to pay the artists and the voice actors, and everything else is kind of like on autopilot almost, because it's a very streamlined process to do animation. Whereas with production, you have logistics. So you have like insurance cost, you have location costs, you have set building, you have unions, you have, this and that. And it can really bump up those things, especially if there's a lot of special effects involved. So animation in comparison is actually quite affordable. So
yeah, the special effects are done by the same person that's doing whatever other asset they're hired to do.
I'd honestly be surprised if the cost per episode for this show was more than $500,000. In fact, I'd say it's probably closer to 350, 375 if I'm just going off of what I know about animation costs. So.
Yeah, all right. So even if they do not get any kind of international distribution, this is not a huge loss for them either way.
Yeah, no, I don't think it'd be a financial loss for them. It's definitely not going to be a financial powerhouse in any way.
Like compared to the cost of something like Picard, like this is peanuts. For the studio.
Picard, they could do like 4 seasons of Lower Decks.
Yeah. And like a couple of licensing deals, like this thing has paid for itself. So.
Yeah, I just need to get those licensing.
I mean, that's
deals.
one of the beauties. Like, I used to work at Paramount Studios back when they had.
Was that me or did he freeze?
I think he
froze.
We lost
oh
him.
boy.
Okay, sorry.
There you are.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera, but I used to work at at Paramount Studios back when they had the Star Trek license before the
merger.
or something like that.
The
before the
break
breakup.
apart. Yeah, I was an intern there at that same time, 2005. Fun times.
Maybe we ran into each other. I don't know, but the real way that the studio looks at Star Trek is it's basically they look at it as a licensing like money pot that they can just dip into whenever they need money. And the Star Trek fan base is hardcore enough where they'll pretty much buy anything. At least that's the studio mentality. So, when they take a look at these new series that Kurtzman is proposing to them, they're like, okay, how do we make this profitable for us? And with Discovery, that was that Netflix deal where basically Netflix paid for 5 seasons up front. And, so like it was a net zero cost for CBS to make that show. With Picard, the return of Patrick Stewart and the deal with Amazon, like, that you made that risk averse. And now with this show, like the low cost for it is going to be, made up for in licensing deals and other stuff and bringing new subscribers into CBS All Access. So like, you may not like the end product, but the way that this has been handled so far on CBS Viacom front has been pretty smart in terms of the industry, So
Well, they're pre-selling the rights to it to sort of pay for the show, which is normal Hollywood practice. I would say that they were hoping for obviously a much larger return on those deals than what has actually ended up being the case.
But then again, like as long as they don't lose money, like they're usually happy.
Oh, absolutely! Like that was the one thing I remember being thrown about all the time is that like I had just arrived there after they'd canceled Star Trek Enterprise. And there's so many people really upset by that because they said we actually started making a whole lot of money this year, more than we expected on the show. And there were rumors that there might do a last minute renewal of it, but then basically Paramount and CBS did their split, and so that killed everything. Like there were so many things that were being.
Movies hated Star Trek.
Oh God, yeah.
He hated it. He couldn't wait to get Enterprise off the air, man. Like he was like, I don't get sci-fi. I don't like this show. I want it gone. So,
yeah, he didn't even like the fact that for what it was sci-fi, it was still pretty cheap to make. He thought it was still too expensive.
And not only
the real
that,
shame is like when Enterprise got canceled, like it was just starting to find its footing,
Oh yeah, they dropped all the weird, stupid stuff that they were doing and said, hey, we can ape a little bit more of what Star Trek really is in the heart and soul area and run with that now that we've got these characters kind of figured out. And yeah, everything just kind of went downhill from that.
And I will say this, usually with new Star Trek series, it takes at least like one season before they start getting good. So you got to keep that in mind when watching Lower Decks. Like, give them a season, then see where they're at before you make a final judgment.
Hey, this episode was slightly better than the previous two. So, I mean, on this rate, if it still says gets superior with each episode, in about 100 episodes, this might be worthy of calling it Star Trek.
Yeah, in 4 seasons, then maybe it'll be
somewhere around
8 seasons in the movie.
Somewhere around 2034. This should be pretty decent.
Well, here's the other thing that's kind of sad. So the guy who made this show, he's basically referencing his old Twitter account, which was TNG_S8, which was just jokey season 8, never produced episodes, satirical episodes of Star Trek. So I didn't even realize this right away because I was just going over this episode and Ransom like makes 2 TOS references and then TNG reference with regards to his away mission stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, like why didn't they try something more inventive like that sentient cave? And then I'm like thinking, where have I've heard the sentient cave idea before, and then I just did a quick search, and yep, it was on a Twitter feed where Beverly Crusher was captured by a sentient cave, and it was by the guy who ran that Twitter was the show creator here, McMahon or whatever, however you want to pronounce his name.
McMahon.
Yeah.
Think
so he's kind of like recycling his own ideas from like 7-8 years ago into his TV show.
Think Vince McMahon, but without the gravitas or testosterone
or showmanship.
Or showmanship.
Yeah.
Or huge muscles.
It was me, Austin. It was me all along.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure if you go into the background of that Twitter feed, you might see by the time this season ends of Lower Decks, you might see a whole lot of familiar ideas populated there.
Probably.
But honestly, everything we've seen in the show so far is just like lifted from previous Star Trek things. But to me, that's what kind of makes it endearing in a way, is that it feels more Star Trek-y than anything we've gotten from Kurtzman so far.
Yes. Oh, it definitely has that, a Star Trek, like it's taking the concepts that are more Star Trek in nature and running with it.
Yeah, like if you even look at the opening credit sequence, like that's a callback to all the TNG era, shows. And like when I first saw that in the first episode, I was like, I missed this stuff. I don't like the arty farty Picard Discovery openings. Like those they didn't feel Trek to me. But like
no,
the opening to this show, like it feels like very Trekish. And I think that the people making this show like genuinely want it to be good, and like they're genuine Star Trek fans. So like that kind of gives me a little bit of hope that this show is going to eventually like find its rhythm and be good. Right now, it's very uneven, in my opinion.
Well, it's strange because even on the animation side of things, when you're writing the scripts, you get all those scripts done before it even goes to animation because they have the storyboard.
Like the writer's room, they
also have to actually
done, especially with animation, because like they need.
Yeah, they need the time to sort of work it out.
Froze again.
But to add even further, so it actually costs them very little to just do a table read of an animation show, even via Skype or Zoom, what have you, and just work out the kinks in between. And because they are such short episodes, they usually end up doing 2 or 3 within a session because it's only like, a 2-hour thing for them. So the fact of the matter is that if they're stumbling this early in actual like completed production, that's not good, because it just kind of shows that they maybe had, I don't know, too much, what do they call it, buffer time between the episodes to actually start cracking down and giving it some effort to keep it a bit more cohesive and maybe nail the tone.
I also think that isn't there a voice actors union rule that you can't go more than 4 or 6 hours per session? I think it's 4 hours.
It has to somehow balance out with the minimum of 12 recording of every line type of thing. So I think there has to be at least a minimum of 4 hours straight before a mandatory break is required, and no more than an 8-hour day. So I think that averages out to about 6 hours of actual work, because the breaks are about an hour. But that's just off of memory, because again,
AKA these people get a lot of money to sit on their duff and make noises like I do.
Yeah, union rules are weird. You never know.
They are. And sometimes they overstep a little bit too much on the talent side of things.
But it's also a director thing. So like the person who's directing the Mariner voice actor, I feel like the voice actress for Mariner is very good. Like I like what she's doing, but I feel like the direction, like they're making her too intense. Like they really need to dial her back a little bit.
Not just her, every single character.
They also seem out of place.
With one of my big issues here is that absolutely every character is so unbelievably hyper. Like, what they remind me of? When I was in LA just for shits and giggles, I visited the Scientology Center right there, and those people were like so super enthusiastic and so high on the tone scale and so hyper, and it just reminds me of that. And as I've been saying all the time now, like, just be a little bit more Norwegian, be a little bit more.
Scientologists are intense.
Because it's just so stressful to just having to listen to that intensity level.
Well, those Scientologists are probably doing more with those weird divining rod things than what they tell us.
Probably.
A lot of hot chicks in Scientology, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
I used to they used to have these little like Scientology gatherings where they were basically like recruitment efforts where they try to trick people into joining up, and they always had like their most beautiful like young ladies out there.
I remember.
Good times, good times.
In fact, Tom Cruise, every movie he's on, he sets up a little Scientology tent, and he tries to get people who are on the cast and crew and stuff like that to come in there and get converted and stuff like that. He doesn't push it though, but he sets it up and it's like, hey, if you're interested, come on in.
Ron Howard was talking about that on Howard Stern one time. He goes, "Tom Cruise ever tried to get you to join Scientology?" Yeah, he brought it up a couple times and said, "You know what, Tom, I'm not much of a joiner," and that was it. He didn't bring it up anymore.
Yeah, I would think it was Oblivion. He set up like a tent for that. And he was.
I have it on good authority that he does it on every movie he's on.
Yeah.
It was especially on Mission Impossible Part 3, the one before.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Hired by Sumner Redstone. Actually, that's where he really went all in.
Yeah. Did you guys see that Tandy Newton interview where she talked about like her scenes with Tom Cruise during Mission Impossible 2?
No, I don't recall that.
Yeah, for those out there in the chat, look it up. It's a very interesting interview. Like she basically kind of, she's not too favorable about how Tom treated her on that movie.
She's driving and he's hanging out of the car window. Have you heard the glory of Lord Zenu?
It had nothing to do with Scientology. She just felt like he was very he intimidated her a lot and forced her to do things that she didn't want to do, type stuff. But like she has these very interesting stories about.
She gonna Ray Fisher him?
She didn't go that far, but she did kind of talk about like her experiences as a black woman in Hollywood and how she was treated early on in her career. And I just found it very interesting because she didn't really hold back. Like she wasn't trying to be PC or anything like that. So it was an interesting interview that she did. I think it was in the Hollywood Reporter very recently, but I don't remember.
Interesting to check out. And something else interesting is that we have a couple of more super chats to go through. So let's continue with that. And Jaegerbomb sent us $5 saying, "Has hell frozen over? I hated the first 2 episodes, but I can't call this one total dog shit. A fluke or a positive trend? Am I being soft on this one? No, if you liked it, you liked it. And then, as we said, in 4 seasons, maybe it'll be all good all over." So, yeah. And Christian Santer sent us €5 saying, "In one of your latest Star Trek reviews reminds me aware of Final Space. It's actually funny and well written. If Star Trek Lower Decks was called Lower Decks, I could have ignored it." Yeah, like it's the as
It's
Tom
the
was
brand.
saying, it's the Star Trek branding that actually makes it more difficult, because otherwise, yeah, you can just ignore it. And
Rob has actually seen Final Space.
Yes, Final Space season 1 of Final Space is excellent. I recommend it to everybody. I've watched a few episodes of season 2, haven't gotten all the way through it, but yeah, it is very, very good.
Cool. And something else cool is the next super chat, which is from, shall we see, the Fessman93, who sent us £5 saying, "Kurtzman talks about diversity and they changed Khan's background to a white English male and into darkness." But that was in 2013. The wokeness hadn't come in full force until 2014, and it was filmed in 2012. So
that wasn't, you know what?
Out here.
You know what? But the thing is about that is they offered the role to Javier Bardem first. He didn't take it because of scheduling. Then they offered it to Benicio del Toro, and he couldn't take it because of scheduling. Also, so Benedict Cumberbatch was on the third on the list. So
it doesn't matter. The idea of making it Khan was stupid from the start.
Yeah.
Because it means nothing to anybody, period, within the film or outside of the film, unless you're completely aware of who the character is. And when the people in the film are less aware of the character is than the people on the outside of the film, there's a problem.
Yeah, should say so.
Typical J.J. Abrams.
Oh, yeah.
Mystery box. That was a mystery box.
I took away your writing card for the day, Matt, so you just hush. No, just so everybody doesn't think like, Matt and I get into these kind of arguments all the fucking time.
See, we can disagree without hating.
Oh God, yeah, like It's
Yeah,
just
but
no thing.
that's the beauty here, isn't it? That here there's actually room for all opinions. Even if someone were to come on and absolutely love Kurtzman and everything done, we disagree, but we die for your right to have that opinion, basically.
Well, I know if my boy Anti-Trekker was on here right now, he'd have my back on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and he's welcome on anytime.
I thought he
not only
was.
that, like your
I thought he
opinion
liked the
allows
first
us
one, but
to
he
think
didn't.
of something differently, right? So,
But I don't think he
Oh, sorry,
liked the
Tom.
second episode, did he? I didn't.
I didn't check that out yet.
I was gonna say.
He didn't like the second episode, just like me, but he kind of came back around on this episode, judging by his review this morning. So he actually liked this episode much
See,
more.
now here's the thing. If you would have went at the argument with the shit in the second episode, I'd have been more on board with your thing. That's the problem. This episode turned me off completely. Like, there was just so many things in this episode that really just cringed me to the point where
I was just disappointed that it felt like more like Star Trek just because of how they redefined and integrated Ransom into this episode. Like, because he felt like the anchor that connected this a bit more closer to what Starfleet officers, how they behave and how they do things, even regardless of the little bit of arrogance
it was at the
and trying to
expense
show
of a
off.
joke, though, and that's the thing,
Yeah.
a bad joke.
But I did like there are little nuggets in each of these episodes that I think are in concept really funny. Even though they may not get like Ransom's whole thing about how he was going to give a speech that would get them out of the prison. But
then he was interrupted by the leader. Yeah.
Look, I gave the show this. Like I said, Cyborg Kid's storyline he had in the last episode, that was actually had potential. Like, that's what this show should have been from the start. Like, the moment the zombie thing came on board in that first episode, the show lost its way. Like, that's the problem, is these guys should not have those kind of problems. Like, that's the thing, is they do live a boring life. Hence, you're allowed to have the slackers. And I mean, in a way, even though it didn't work out well as a joke, because I think, Andre, you said you didn't like it, and nobody else really commented on it from my recollection. But like the captain changing the rule of everybody having to have their shit done and creating that whole Boimer rule or whatever at the end. Like, that is actually what the show should be more about.
Well, you know what's funny though,
kind of stuff, but it was executed badly, was my point.
You know what's funny is, like, in every Star Trek episode, they get into these scenarios that affect the entire ship, but we only see it from the command crew point of view.
Right.
Thing like the Cerritos still gets into those like big situations, but we get to see it from the point of view of the grunts as well as the.
Are we though? That's my thing. I don't think we are, and that's my other point. Is I don't think they should be getting as in big of. It should be more like Script and I pointed out. Like, they should be more like they're joking about or talking about did you hear about whatever USS had to deal with this so and so last weekend? Oh yeah, that was crazy. I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that. Or
maybe they're stuck in the cargo bay while the excitement's happening around them. Like, they can't get out because of the security lockdown.
But I mean,
or there's an explosion happening somewhere else.
There is a zombie virus on the ship. They're going to run into it.
But the point is, they should have had that already happen on the first contact. Like, these are the kind of things that normally wouldn't probably happen on a second contact. And even if so, the way that those characters acted within the episode, it may have been whatever for a cartoon, for a joke, but it's unreal. And it's things like that make me feel like these people they're doing the shtick. They're doing the airplane hot shots shtick in Star Trek universe, which it shouldn't be. That's my problem, is it's the wrong kind of comedy. If you're going to do a little bit of satire, tongue-in-cheek, fine. But there's plenty of stuff to dig into in the Star Trek universe to where you don't have to belittle Star Trek and lower the level of Star Trek. And I mean, again, it's not to even make puns on the title, but no, this is really below Star Trek. I
would even
really
argue,
is.
Like this isn't satire. This is absurdist humor.
Yeah.
Which doesn't belong in Star Trek. I don't care which way you cut it. It just doesn't.
Well, like, for instance, if I were to do this and they said, okay, script doctor, come at us with a very absurd joke that you could use in the show, I would be like, okay, well, let's have one of the officers.
That goes well with,
Oh, sorry, Matt. So have one of the officers get to the transporter and start just beaming out the waste matter within a human being before they go to the washroom. So they have to go all of a sudden, and they get to the toilet, and all of a sudden it just vanishes. So then they're like, hey, what the heck's going on? And then as they leave, you just beam it back into them. So then they have to go back to the washroom. You just kind of have them going back and forth between the washroom, and they're never actually able to relieve themselves because the guy on the transporter is just beaming their poop in and out of their body as like a revenge plot. Like that's kind of like the thing where you take advantage of the concept of like the technology in Star Trek and use it in a practical absurdist way to sort of get a joke. Like how frustrating would it be is that you feel like you have to go to the washroom, you're rushing to the head, and then all of a sudden it's gone. That feeling just vanishes. You're like, hey, what the heck's going up? Now I'm super starving. And then you go run to the replicator and get some food, and as soon as you eat it, then all of a sudden you're full again because the guy just refilled up your stomach with matter that was in a particle stream. So that's where you get to the absurdity aspect, where you take advantage of the Star Trek technology. What they're doing here is they're not quite committed to the actual Star Trek, the actual Star Trek stuff that goes awry, like the Klingon joke. Like, okay, so there's a noise happening over communications between a Klingon and the Cerritos, and so the Klingon officer's like, I'm gonna kill my engineer, prepare to die. It's like that's pretty lame. That's not real. That doesn't feel like Klingon-ish, Klingon joke-ish.
I like
thing.
that, but
I mean, it's absurd, but it just doesn't feel like a Klingon joke.
I liked it too, and I also felt like it was important to point out that Mariner's style has consequences that aren't necessarily positive, so I kind of appreciated that as more than just like a gag. I felt like it was something that told the audience, okay, we're not supposed to be rooting for Mariner's insubordination all the time.
Yeah, but given the fact that we know what Klingon opera is that noise really going to be offensive to a Klingon?
Well, let's just get past the fact that they wouldn't hear it anyway.
There's also that part.
Let's also get past the fact that we have 2 more super chats to get through. The first one is $5 Canadian from Christopher Richo. I hope I didn't butcher that. Maybe it's supposed to be French Canadian. If so, sorry. Tom, you need to check out the miniseries Justice from the same artist as Kingdom Come. So that one is for you. And then the final one.
I'm trying to remember if I've seen that one already or not.
Hair, who sent us $5 saying, damn it, I got distracted. Andre, Tom, can either of you point me to the dedicated Rob Must Suffer part of the stream so I can catch up?
Rob's been mostly quiet.
I think that we suffered, all of us, pretty evenly throughout this stream. However, speaking of suffering, there are some really, really good news coming today, as we were talking about. Namely, if we go out of the world of Star Trek, where everything is just shit and mystery right now, if we go to the world of DC, they have a corporation behind them called AT&T. And who would have thought, but that telecommunications company is actually doing really, really good on the movie side, especially on the DC side, because now we have not just Ben Affleck, but also Michael Keaton coming up as Batman. And before the next stream, which begins in 25 minutes on Midnight's Edge After Dark, we have a video for you that we're gonna show right now in just a couple of minutes. Where we basically shared our initial thoughts, our hot takes on this most exciting DC news. So we're gonna end this, and then we'll just stay here because we're gonna show that video right now. Before that, though, I just want to everyone in the panel for joining us to discuss lower decks. I hope to see you all in 25 minutes over and After Dark, where we will be discussing the DC news.
I'll be sharing that link in the chat.
Yeah, and also thanks to everyone in the chat who were following, and just stay with us because we'll have a video coming for you in just 1 or 2 minutes.
All right, so check out Script Doctor's channel. Check out Matthew Cadis's channel. Rob's got a channel, but he doesn't do anything on there anymore.
Can I do a quick plug?
Absolutely, because I think you have another channel too, don't you?
Well, I do a weekly podcast with some friends of mine where we talk
that's
about
what I mean, yeah.
Stuff like that. It's if you go to saltynerdpodcast.com, it'll take you to our iTunes or Spotify, depending on what type of device you use. And we do 3 shows a week. Our Wednesday shows where we talk about Star Trek Lower Decks. So I'd love for you guys to go check it out and let us know what you think. And
If you want to see me get beat up, I got beat up on the first show because these guys liked it and I didn't, and they invited me on.
well, you came out swinging, Tom.
Oh, I did, of course.
But yeah, we have like a weekly theme where we have like, adventure movies or bad science fiction movies or box office bombs or something like that. And then we'll watch like 3 movies that fit in that theme and we'll talk about them. And it's fun. Like my friends, like they're kind of like a little bit salty about, certain things. And so like we have a lot of laughs and we talk about, the behind the scenes stuff of like how the movie was made. And so like there's a educational aspect to it from a filmmaking standpoint, but there's also a comedy aspect to it from ripping on movies and stuff like that. So if you guys like kind of the talks that Midnight's Edge does, where it's kind of wonky, but at the same time it's entertaining, please check out the podcast. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. So do check that out. All right. So everyone, just stay tuned. Stay on the channel because we will have a Batman video coming for you inside of 60 seconds. And then join us on After Dark to discuss the DC news.
All right.
And with that, thanks for joining us.
Take care, everybody.